The candlelight flickers across white tablecloths at Lombardi's, that upscale Italian restaurant tucked into the heart of Los Angeles, where the city's most dangerous men conduct their most consequential business. Burgundy leather booths line the walls, each one a fortress of privacy and shadow. Soft jazz plays from hidden speakers. The air smells like rosemary, garlic, truffle oil, the scent of money and refinement. In the private booth at the back, Giovanni Castellano sits frozen. He is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that costs more than most people earn in a month, the white shirt beneath unbuttoned at the collar revealing a chest scarred from violence and survival. His hair is dark, silvered slightly at the temples. His eyes are storm gray, penetrating, the kind of eyes that have watched men beg for mercy they would never receive. A thin scar runs from his right eye to his cheekbone, a reminder of the street fight that almost killed him when he was 17. But none of that matters right now. His hands tremble. His hands, the hands that have signed execution orders for 2 decades, the hands that have orchestrated the rise and fall of empires across California, shake on the mahogany table like a terrified child's. His 7-year-old daughter Emma clings to his arm, crying, her small body racked with sobs that pierce through the controlled silence of the restaurant. 3 armed men in dark jackets surround their booth. The first man stands to Giovanni's left, a pistol hanging at his side. The second blocks the exit. The third, the one who arrived with the others, holds a gun aimed directly at Emma. Douglas Hale stands at the front of the booth. He is 52 years old, his face bloated with the soft excess of a man who has never worked a day in his life, who profits from the desperation of people with nowhere else to turn. His pale blue suit is wrinkled. Sweat beads his forehead. In his right hand, a pistol. In his left hand, an envelope stuffed with papers, foreclosure notices, debt collection demands, the machinery of ruin. Giovanni's lieutenants, Sergio and Dario, stand frozen near the kitchen entrance, guns trained on them by the other 2 men. Sergio is in his 40s, muscular, loyal for 15 years. Dario is younger, sharper, faster, but neither of them moves. Neither of them breathes. Because Douglas Hale has made one thing absolutely clear, any sudden movement and the child dies. Giovanni's world has collapsed into a single point of terror. The most powerful man in Los Angeles, the man who built his empire from streets stained with blood, the man who survived a childhood where violence was the only language spoken, is rendered completely helpless. Emma cries. She calls for her father. She reaches for him. And he cannot reach back. In the adjacent booth, a woman in a black and white maid's uniform stands clearing plates. Her name is Nora Harper. She is 31 years old but looks older, her face carved with exhaustion, her hands calloused from scrubbing floors that cost more than her entire annual salary. Her dark brown hair is pulled back severely. Her eyes are a striking deep green, but they are hollow now, drained of hope by too many nights working double shifts and still falling further behind. She had not been paying attention to the booth behind her. She was focused on the work, on the precise angles of clearing a table without making noise, on remaining invisible, which is what all invisible people must learn to do. But the sound of Emma's crying cuts through everything. Nora turns. Her eyes find the child's face first. Small. Terrified. Alone in the way that only a child abandoned by circumstance can be alone. Then her eyes find the man pointing the gun. She does not think. There is no moment of hesitation, no internal debate about risk and consequence. The sight of a child in danger activates something primal in her chest, something that has nothing to do with caution or self-preservation. She knows about being powerless. She knows what it means to cry for help that never comes. She knows about the weight of being small in a world designed to crush small things. The wine bottle sits on the nearest table, a bottle of Barolo, probably worth more than the shoes she is wearing. She grabs it without thought. The glass is cool in her palm. The weight of it is solid. She swings. The first man, the one standing closest, does not see it coming. Why would he? She is nobody. She is a maid. She is part of the furniture, the background, the invisible infrastructure that keeps these worlds running. She does not act. She does not fight. She does not move with purpose. The bottle strikes his temple with a sound like a gunshot muffled by silk. Glass explodes. Red wine and blood spray across the burgundy leather booth. He drops. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoes through the restaurant. The second man turns toward her. His hand goes to his gun. But Nora is faster now, moving with a desperation born from love for a child she barely knows. She grabs a metal pot of coffee from the service station, still hot, still steaming, and throws the liquid directly into his face. He screams. The gun falls. His hands fly to his eyes, to his burning skin, to the searing pain that blinds him. The third man, Douglas Hale himself, realizes too late that his control has shattered. He stands, the gun still in his hand, but he is off balance, confused, not prepared for the invisible maid to become a force of nature. Nora drives forward. She hits him with the full weight of her body, driving him backward into the booth. They fall together. The gun skitters across the polished floor. Nora is on top of him, her hands finding his throat, her eyes burning with a fury no one in this restaurant has ever seen from her. She is small, but she is fighting for a child. She is weak, but she is fighting for something precious. She is invisible, but in this moment, she is the most visible thing in the world. Giovanni Castelliano stares. The most feared crime boss in Los Angeles sits paralyzed, watching this woman in a maid's uniform fight off 3 armed men. He watches her protect his daughter. He watches her move with a courage that transcends anything he has learned in his 38 years of violence and power. Emma stops crying. She watches Nora. Her small hand reaches toward her rescuer. Sergio and Dario break free from the gunman holding them and move into action with the precision of trained soldiers. Douglas Hale is thrown to the ground. The wounded men are subdued. It happens in seconds. The crisis passes as quickly as it erupted. But Giovanni cannot look away from Nora Harper. She stands there in her black and white uniform, breathing hard, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline begins to fade. A spot of blood decorates her white collar. Her hair has come loose from its careful arrangement. She looks terrified and brave and utterly transformed. Giovanni realizes something in that moment. He has no idea who this woman is. She has worked in his home for 8 months. She has cleaned his floors, cooked his meals, cared for his daughter when his lieutenants were occupied with the business of empire. And he has never truly seen her. She was wallpaper. She was the background of his life. Until tonight. Emma runs toward Nora, not toward Giovanni. The child bypasses her father entirely, launching herself into Nora's arms with the certainty of a child who knows exactly who saved her life. Nora catches her, holds her, whispers something into her hair that only Emma can hear. The restaurant is silent. The soft jazz has stopped. The other diners have vanished, wisely, quickly, understanding that they have glimpsed something they were never meant to see. Only the staff remains, frozen in place, aware that they have witnessed something that will reshape the entire structure of power in this room. Giovanni stands slowly. He straightens his suit. He buttons his shirt with careful, deliberate movements. His scar pulls tight as he clenches his jaw. When he speaks, his voice is deep and solid like an oath, measured and controlled despite the fact that his entire world has just tilted on its axis. "Take them," he says to Sergio and Dario, gesturing toward Douglas Hale and the other men. The lieutenants move without question. They haul the wounded men toward the kitchen, toward the back exits, toward whatever darkness waits beyond the candlelit sanctuary of Lombardi's. Douglas Hale's eyes meet Giovanni's for one final moment, and in that exchange, Hale understands that he has made a terrible mistake. He has forced the wrong man's hand. He has threatened the wrong child. He has set in motion events that will destroy him completely. And he deserves it. Giovanni watches them disappear. Then he turns his attention back to the booth. Back to Emma. Back to Nora Harper, who is still holding his daughter, still trembling, still not fully understanding what she has just done. But what she does not know, what she cannot possibly know, is that the man whose child she just saved, the man who is now watching her with an expression that blends gratitude and something far more complicated, is Giovanni Castellano, the most feared crime boss in Los Angeles. The man who built his empire from streets stained with poverty and violence. The man who has spent 15 years raising his daughter alone after his wife was murdered by rivals who wanted to destroy him. She saved his entire world. And the cost of that salvation is about to change her life completely. Before we continue, drop a like if this story has captured you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because what you are about to learn will shock you. Now let us go back. Back to 78 crumpled dollars. Back to an eviction notice that read like a death sentence. Back to the beginning of the story, to understand how an invisible maid and the most dangerous man in California found each other on a night when everything shattered. Back to where Nora Harper's journey toward salvation began. $78. That is all that remains. Nora Harper sits cross-legged on a threadbare carpet the color of old bruises, her fingers trembling as she counts the crumpled bills beneath a single lamplight at 2:47 in the morning. Her studio apartment in East Los Angeles is so small that if she stretched her arms wide, she could touch both walls at once. The fourth-floor walk-up. The elevator has been broken for 6 months. $78. She counts again, moving each bill with the precision of someone performing a ritual. $1, $2, $3. The numbers blur together because her eyes are filling with tears she refuses to let fall. She has learned that tears are a luxury she cannot afford. Above her metal bed frame, pinned with a single thumbtack, is an eviction notice. The paper is white and official and it reads like a death sentence written in bureaucratic language. $125,000 owed in back rent and penalties to landlord Douglas Hale. Due in 14 days. 14 days. She has counted the remaining days so many times that the number has lost all meaning. It is abstract now, like mathematics that applies to someone else's life. Nora turns to the photograph beside her on the carpet. It is the only thing of value in this room. Marcus. Her husband. His face is young in this picture, taken before the cancer, before the medical bills, before everything collapsed like a house built on sand. He is smiling at the camera with his arm around her shoulders, and she is leaning into him as if she could merge with his body and disappear. That photograph was taken 9 years ago. Marcus died 3 years ago on a Tuesday in March. She whispers to his image now, her voice barely a sound. I am trying, Marcus. I am trying so hard. But I do not know how to save myself anymore. The apartment is silent except for the sound of traffic on the street below, the endless hum of a city that does not care whether she survives or drowns. She folds the bills back into her wallet. The wallet is leather, cracked and worn, purchased when she was married and money was something that existed. She places it on the nightstand next to a glass of water that has been sitting there since yesterday. She has learned not to waste water by drinking it immediately. Better to let it sit. Better to ration. Better to practice the art of surviving on less. Her alarm is set for 5:15 in the morning. She has exactly 2 hours and 28 minutes to sleep before she must rise and prepare for work. But sleep does not come easily anymore. Sleep requires the ability to forget, and forgetting is something she has lost the skill to do. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Nora Harper pulls her black and white maid uniform over her body and fastens the buttons with numb fingers. The uniform is a size too large, hanging on her frame like a shroud. She has lost weight in the past 6 months. Her collarbones are sharp ridges beneath her skin. Her ribs show when she lifts her arms. She pins her dark hair back with a clip that belonged to her mother, the last object her mother gave her before she died 15 years ago. The clip is silver, or it was silver once. Now it is tarnished, grey like an old sky. The Giovanni Castellano mansion sits in the Hollywood Hills like a monument to excess. White stone. Columns. Floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the entire city of Los Angeles. Nora enters through the service entrance at the back, the door that was designed for people like her, people who work in houses but do not belong in them. The kitchen is enormous, all stainless steel and granite. 3 chefs work there preparing meals that cost more than her weekly salary. They do not look at her as she passes. To them, she is like the appliances, functional, necessary, invisible. She moves through the marble hallways carrying a dust cloth and furniture polish, moving the way she has learned to move in this house, quietly, carefully, like a ghost that belongs to no one. The banister is cold beneath her fingers as she polishes each section. The wood gleams under her touch. Behind her, somewhere in the depths of this mansion, lives a man she has never properly met. Giovanni Castellano. She has worked here for 8 months and has seen him only 3 times, always from a distance. Once in the study, speaking in low Italian to men in dark suits. Once on the staircase above her, descending with the kind of power that made the air around him feel heavier. And once in the dining room, standing at the head of a long table set with crystal and silver, his face illuminated by candlelight, his expression carved from stone. The other household staff gossip in Italian when they think she cannot hear them. They speak of his tragedy, whispered in the kitchen late at night. A daughter. Stolen 6 months ago. Missing. Gone. The police could find nothing. And Mr. Castellano became something different after that, something harder, something colder. The staff says he barely sleeps. That he takes calls at 3 in the morning. That his eyes have become the eyes of a man who has already lost everything he loved. Nora finishes the banister and moves to the study. The books here are leather-bound and old. She dusts each spine with care. Some of them are in Italian. Some are in English. She cannot read Italian, so she reads the English titles. The Count of Monte Cristo. Crime and Punishment. The Odyssey. Books about men searching for things they had lost. Books about men seeking revenge. She wonders what Mr. Castellano reads when the house is silent and the rest of the world is sleeping. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she has cleaned 7 rooms. Her feet ache. Her back aches. The small cut on her left hand from the edge of a picture frame has started to bleed again, and she wraps a tissue around it to keep the blood from staining the white gloves she wears. She eats lunch in the kitchen, standing in a corner. The chefs have left out chicken and rice meant for the household staff. She takes a small portion, barely enough to quiet the persistent hunger that lives in her stomach like a trapped animal. At 5:30, she clocks out and takes the bus across the city to Alameda Street. The women's shelter there occupies the first floor of a building that was once a hotel. The paint on the walls is the color of old hospitals. The hallway smells like bleach and sadness and something else, hope, maybe, or the memory of hope. She pushes open the door marked office and finds her supervisor, Margaret, sitting at a desk surrounded by files. Margaret is 63 years old and has been working with homeless women for 40 years. Her eyes have seen everything. Her hands are scarred from helping people who did not want to be helped. She looks up when Nora enters. "You are early," she says. Her voice is kind. Nora has learned that kindness is almost harder to bear than cruelty. "Yes," Nora says. "I wanted to spend time with Emma before dinner service." The children's room is at the end of the hallway. It is painted yellow, and there are drawings on the walls made by the children who have stayed here. Drawings of houses with smoke rising from the chimneys. Drawings of families holding hands. Drawings of things the children had once had and lost. Emma is sitting on a small bed in the corner, her dark curls falling across her face as she stares at a picture book. The book is upside down. She is not reading it. She is just holding it because it is something to hold. "Emma," Nora says softly. She sits on the edge of the bed. The mattress sinks beneath her weight. Emma looks up, and her entire face changes. Her eyes, which had been blank, suddenly fill with recognition and something that might be love. "Vivi," she says. This is what Emma calls her. Not Nora. Vivi. A shortened version that Emma invented 3 months ago, and no one has corrected her. Nora pulls Emma into her arms. The child is small and warm and she fits against Nora's chest like she was designed to fit there. Emma's fingers grip the fabric of Nora's uniform. "You came back," Emma whispers. "I knew you would come back. Everyone else leaves, but you come back." Nora closes her eyes. "I will always come back," she says. "I promise you, Emma. I will always come back to you." What she does not know, as she holds this small child, is that Emma is not an orphan. Emma is not lost because her family abandoned her. Emma is lost because she was stolen. 6 months ago, taken from the man who loved her more than he loved his own life. Taken by people who wanted to hurt him. Taken to disappear into a system that swallows children like water swallows stones. The man who has been searching for her every single day is the same man whose floors Nora polishes every morning. The same man who walks through rooms without seeing her. The same man who is slowly breaking from the inside out. The October wind cut through the mansion's driveway like a blade wrapped in ice, carrying dead leaves that scattered across the stone in patterns that meant nothing and everything at once. Nora arrived at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday, the 15th, a uniform pressed, her hand steady even though they had trembled all through the bus ride. She did not know that her entire life was about to splinter into before and after. The foyer was chaos. Sergio and Dario stood near the grand staircase, speaking rapid Italian in voices that came in sharp bursts. Phones rang. Someone ran past carrying a folder. The air tasted like coffee and something else, electricity, the kind that comes before a storm. Nora kept her head down, moved toward the kitchen like she always did, invisible, part of the walls, just another shadow in the machinery of this enormous house. Then she heard a voice. Not Giovanni's. A woman's voice, official and careful. Social worker, Nora's mind registered before she could stop it. There was something wrong with that. She froze in the kitchen doorway. The living room stretched out before her in tones of cream and gold, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hollywood Hills, and standing in the center of it all was Giovanni Castellano. For the first time she truly saw him. Not as the man who walked past her. As a man broken into pieces. He was on his knees. His hands shook. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "Emma," he said. "Emma, mi amore, e voi." Beside him stood a woman in a navy blazer, carrying a folder. And holding her hand, small and terrified, dressed in clothes that did not quite fit, with dark curls falling across her forehead, was Emma. The social worker spoke. "Mr. Castellano, we traced her records through the National Missing Children's database. She was taken from the hospital nursery 7 years ago during a custody dispute. We found her at the Alameda shelter for abandoned children. This is your daughter. Emma Castellano." Emma did not recognize this man on his knees. She saw only a stranger. Her lip trembled. She began to cry. Then she saw Nora. Emma broke away from the social worker's grip and ran, her small legs carrying her across the marble floor, and she wrapped her arms around Nora's legs, buried her face in the black and white uniform that had become the only safe thing in her world. "Nora," Emma cried. "Nora, do not let them take me. Nora, please." Giovanni rose slowly from his knees. He looked at his daughter clinging to the invisible maid. He looked at Nora's hand stroking Emma's hair with a tenderness that spoke of 8 months of 3 a.m. nightmares soothed, of fevers watched, of a child held when no one else remained. For the first time, he truly saw her. The social worker explained that Nora had been Emma's primary caregiver at the shelter, the only stable presence in her life, the reason Emma had begun to speak again after months of silence. Giovanni listened with his eyes fixed on Nora's face. She would not meet his gaze. Her cheeks were flushed with something that might have been anger or shame. He stood and approached them slowly, each step deliberate, controlled. Nora finally looked up. Their eyes met. The room held its breath. "You protected my daughter," he said. His voice sounded like it came from somewhere very deep inside him, rough with emotion, layered with things that had no names. Nora did not respond. Emma clung to her legs. The social worker shifted the folder beneath her arm, uncomfortable in the weight of what had just been revealed. 2 hours later, Nora sat on the edge of a leather chair in Giovanni's library, still wearing her uniform, her hands folded in her lap. Emma slept on the couch between them, her hand reaching toward Nora even in sleep. The room smelled like old books and furniture polish and the kind of wealth that does not announce itself. Giovanni sat across from her. He had changed into a fresh white shirt. His dark eyes never left her face. "How long have you cared for her?" he asked. 6 months, Nora said. "Since she arrived at the shelter. She trusts you. She has no one else." Giovanni leaned forward. "I want to hire you. Not as a maid. As Emma's nanny. You would live here. Help her adjust to having me as her father. To having a home. Name your price. Whatever you ask." Nora stiffened visibly. "I cannot accept charity, Mr. Castellano. This is not charity." His voice remained careful, controlled, the voice of a man used to getting what he wanted. "My daughter needs you. And you," he paused, his eyes sharp as broken glass, "you need help. I know about the eviction notice. $125,000 in 14 days. You have $78 in your account. Those are not problems you can handle alone." Nora stood abruptly, her hands trembling. "Why would you help me?" Her voice cracked. "I am nobody. I am just a woman who cleans your floors. Emma is lucky. Emma has you now. She does not need me anymore." From the doorway, Sergio and Dario watched their boss's face shift into an expression neither had seen in 15 years. Sergio leaned toward Dario and whispered in Italian, "In all the years I have served him, I have never seen him look at anyone like this." Giovanni stood and moved toward Nora. He did not touch her, but she could feel the weight of his presence, the way he seemed to take up all the air in the room. "You saved my daughter when I could not," he said, each word deliberate as a knife thrust. "You held her through nights I do not know about. You taught her that someone could be trusted. Let me help you now. Not because you are nobody, but because you are the only person on this earth who has earned the right to ask anything of me." The silence that followed was absolute. Meanwhile, in a property management office in downtown Los Angeles, where the fluorescent lights hummed with a sound like electric insects, Douglas Hale sat behind a metal desk that cost more than most people made in a year. He was 53, thin-faced, with the kind of teeth that belonged to a man who had never known hunger. A Rolex gleamed on his wrist. Diana Whitfield sat across from him, her blonde hair arranged in waves that required an expensive salon visit every 3 weeks. She wore Chanel. She smelled like gardenia. She was the kind of beautiful that concealed cruelty. "The Harper woman," Diana said, her voice smooth as oil. "You are certain she is desperate enough?" Douglas opened a folder. Inside was a photograph of Nora, financial statements, her schedule. $125,000 she does not have. Eviction in 12 days. She is perfect. "I have a buyer in Dubai," Diana continued. "He pays well for women with her profile. Clean, educated, desperate. Docile." She smiled. "They disappear so completely." "She will disappear," Douglas agreed. "No one will look for her. She has no family. No one at the shelter asks questions about who comes and goes." What they did not know was that the child she protected at that shelter was Emma Castellano, and they had just marked the wrong woman with an intention that would cost them everything. For days later, the mansion kitchen filled with golden morning light. Nora stood at the stove, making breakfast, scrambled eggs and fresh fruit, food she had learned Emma loved. The child sat at the kitchen table drawing with colored pencils, her dark head bent in concentration. A picture began to emerge, the woman in black and white, a child, and above them both, a son. Giovanni entered still wearing yesterday's shirt, exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and phone calls and investigations. Emma looked up from her drawing and ran to him, suddenly brave, suddenly trusting. She showed him her picture. "Look, Papa. This is Vivi and me." Giovanni knelt to her eye level, his large hands gentle. "It is beautiful, Emma. You are a magnificent artist." He kissed the top of her head. His voice, when he spoke, was different from the one Nora had heard before. Softer. Human. Nora poured coffee. Her hands were steady. They stood in the kitchen while Emma drew, and Giovanni asked about her husband, about Marcus, about what had broken her life into pieces. Nora told him everything. The diagnosis. Cancer, stage 4. $473,000 in hospital bills. Experimental treatments. Credit cards maxed. Savings gone. Debt transferred. $125,000 owed to a man who looked at her like she was prey. "I am working," Nora said. "I will figure it out." "It is already done," Giovanni said. "What?" "The debt. I paid it. This morning. The eviction is cancelled." Nora's face went white. "No. Absolutely not. I do not want your money, Mr. Castellano. I do not need to be rescued." Giovanni set down his coffee cup with a soft clink of ceramic on marble. "Everyone needs rescue sometimes. You rescued my daughter. This is not charity. This is balance." But balance was a luxury neither of them would have time to find. 3 blocks away, at the mansion service gate, Douglas Hale intercepted Nora on her afternoon walk with Emma. He was smiling. It was the smile of a man who had never experienced consequences. "Miss Harper," he said. "You have been avoiding my calls." Nora pulled Emma close. The child's small hand gripped her uniform. "I am working on the payment." "No," Douglas said. "You are living in a fantasy. You have 5 days. If you do not have $125,000, we will discuss other arrangements." He looked at Emma with an assessment that made Nora's blood freeze. "The child is lovely. Very marketable." "Leave," Nora said, her voice steady even as her hand shook. "Now." Douglas left, but not before making his meaning clear through the weight of his silence. Sergio heard everything from the garden shadows. He reported to Giovanni immediately. That night, Giovanni's office became a war room. Phones rang. Computers hummed. Within 2 hours, his network had unraveled everything. 6 women disappeared from Douglas's properties over 6 years. International contacts. Diana Whitfield's luxury connections providing buyers in Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong. A trafficking operation that had been running for a decade beneath the notice of law enforcement. Sergio stood beside the desk. He threatened her. And Emma. Giovanni's rage was cold, crystalline, the kind of rage that does not shout but instead freezes the room into ice. Then he chose his death, Giovanni said quietly. And somewhere in the October darkness, machines began to move. The candlelight flickered across white tablecloths. Garlic and wine hung heavy in the warm air of Lombardi's restaurant, the kind of place where men whispered deals that changed lives, where power breathed through every corner booth. Giovanni Castellano sat with his back to the wall, the way a careful man always sat, watching the dining room through eyes the color of storm clouds. Beside him, a woman in a torn maid's uniform caught her breath. Across from them, a 7-year-old girl colored on the paper tablecloth, her small fingers tight around a crayon, oblivious. Emma had stopped crying 2 minutes ago. "You are safe," Giovanni said, and his voice was low, solid like an oath carved into stone. He did not touch Nora yet. His hands remained flat on the table, deliberately visible, deliberately still. "Nothing will touch you again. I have your word on this." Nora's knuckles were split open. The wine bottle had shattered on impact, and the gunman's skull had given way like rotted fruit. She could still feel the percussion of it traveling up her arm. She could still feel the heat of the coffee pot, the weight of Douglas Hale's body as she tackled him into the booth, the animal desperation of a woman with nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. "My debt," she said. Her voice was hoarse, fractured like broken glass. "The $125,000. I still owe." "No." Giovanni's eyes cut to her with the precision of a blade. "That debt died when Douglas Hale threatened my daughter. Everything he owns is already being seized. His properties, his accounts, his network. By morning, there will be nothing left of him but a name that disappears from record." Emma looked up from her coloring. "Is he the bad man?" Nora pulled the child close. Emma's small hand found hers, trusting, innocent, unaware that 7 minutes ago a loaded pistol had been aimed at her forehead. "Yes, baby," Nora whispered. "But he cannot hurt us anymore." The restaurant around them had emptied. Customers had fled the moment the doors burst open, the moment Douglas Hale's voice had shattered the careful quiet. The waiters had vanished into the kitchen. The only people who remained were Giovanni's men, Sergio and Dario, positioned at the entrance and near the private booth, their bodies alert, their hands never far from the weapons they carried with the ease of men accustomed to violence. Giovanni set down his water glass. The clink of crystal on marble was the only sound besides breathing. "I cleared your debt this afternoon," he said. "Before Douglas arrived. Before any of this. I had already decided. You saved my daughter's life at the shelter. That is not something that is repaid with money. That is something that is answered with permanence." Nora's eyes widened. I cannot accept." "You can," Giovanni said. "And you will. You will work for me, not as a maid but as Emma's nanny. You will live in the house. You will have health insurance, education funds for yourself, a salary that will never leave you counting pennies again. You will never wonder how you will pay for food or rent. That part of your life is finished." The words landed like they were spoken in a language Nora only half understood. Permanence. Health insurance. A salary that would not leave her gasping. She had lived so long in the arithmetic of desperation, $78 divided by 14 days, knowing exactly how many meals she could afford, knowing exactly when the eviction notice would become a reality, that abundance seemed like a fairy tale told to someone else's daughter. "I do not deserve," she began. "Do not tell me what you deserve," Giovanni interrupted, and his voice carried an edge that made even Sergio glance over in surprise. "I have spent the last 2 hours learning exactly what you deserve. I have spent years believing that the world was divided into people who moved and people who were moved upon. Then Emma came into my life and reminded me that the division is smaller than that. There are people who save. And there are people who watch while children cry. You saved." The restaurant door swung open. Sergio's hand moved toward his jacket with the speed of trained reflex, but it was not an intruder. It was Marco, one of Giovanni's senior men, his face flushed, his breathing urgent. He moved directly to Giovanni and bent to whisper, his eyes never leaving Nora. In 15 years of working for this man, Marco had never seen him sit this close to a woman who was not blood. He had never seen him touch someone's hand with such deliberate gentleness. And he had certainly never seen him offer permanence to anyone outside the family. "The federal operation is moving faster than expected," Marco said quietly. Diana Whitfield's phones lit up the moment Douglas went dark. "They are coordinating the arrests for dawn. For hours from now." Giovanni nodded. "Is the evidence solid?" "Airtight," Marco said. 43 women rescued from 3 continents. Every transaction documented. Every connection mapped. She will not see daylight again in this life. Emma colored another stripe on her drawing. Blue, then yellow, then red. Colors for sad days, she had told Nora once. When she feels sad, she looks at colors. The resilience of children was its own kind of miracle. Giovanni stood. The movement was fluid, deliberate, the way a man moves when he has made a decision that settles something final in his chest. He buttoned his suit jacket with one hand. "We are leaving," he said. "Sergio will drive us. Marco, ensure that the restaurant is cleaned before dawn. I do not want anyone to see what happened here. There is no crime scene in Lombardi's. There is only a private party that ended early." "Already taken care of," Marco said. As they moved toward the exit, Nora caught her reflection in the polished mirror beside the bar. Her uniform was torn. Blood from her knuckles had dried on her wrists. Her hair had come loose from its pins and fell in dark waves around her face. She looked like a woman who had survived something, not someone who deserved permanence. But Emma's hand gripped hers with absolute trust. And Giovanni had looked at her the way no one had looked at her since her husband died, like she was not invisible. Like she mattered. Like being invisible was over. The October night air bit cold as they exited onto the street. A black SUV idled at the curb, its engine barely a whisper, its tinted windows reflecting nothing. Sergio opened the back door. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Emma climbed in first, settling onto the seat with the unself-conscious grace of a child who had learned, in the past 24 hours, that the world could change completely and still hold her safe. Giovanni waited for Nora to slide in beside her daughter before closing the door with a soft, final click. From the front seat, Sergio raised the privacy partition between the driver's area and the back. It rose with hydraulic smoothness, sealing them into a space that was somehow both a sanctuary and a capsule suspended between her old life and whatever came next. Emma leaned against Nora's shoulder and closed her eyes. The child was asleep within moments, the way children sleep when the adults around them have decided that safety is real. Nora stared out the window at Los Angeles sliding past, the homeless encampments in the overpasses, the all-night laundromats, the streets where she had walked 1,000 shifts in her worn-through shoes. She had been invisible on those streets. A ghost passing through other people's nights. And now, Giovanni's phone lit up in the darkness. He read the message without expression, then placed the phone face down on his thigh. "Douglas Hale left the city 30 minutes ago," he said quietly. He reached for his emergency contacts. Called in favors. Tried to run to Nevada, Arizona, anywhere that might offer an hour's head start. Nora turned to look at him. "He will not reach Nevada," Giovanni continued. 30 minutes after he crossed the state line, federal agents stopped his car. They found documents, photographs, recordings of every conversation he had with Diana Whitfield. Evidence that he willingly provided. He is cooperating fully now. He is telling them everything. The SUV turned toward the hills, climbing toward the mansion where Nora had moved through rooms invisible for so many months. "And Diana Whitfield?" Nora asked. "Will be arrested at her home in approximately 3 hours, Giovanni said. She is in her Beverly Hills mansion right now, unaware that her empire is collapsing in real time. Her communications have been monitored for weeks. We provided every piece of evidence to the federal prosecutors. They will move at dawn." Nora's hands were still shaking. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do all of this?" Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her split, blooded hand in his. His fingers were warm, his grip gentle, his touch the complete opposite of everything she had learned to expect from power. "Because you stood up," he said simply. "When I froze, you moved. When I was paralyzed by fear, you fought. You taught my daughter that some people do not run. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure that you never have to fight alone again." Outside the window, the city lights blurred past like stars falling from the sky. The rain that had threatened all evening began to fall, soft at first, then harder, washing the streets clean. Emma slept between them, her small hand still clutching the crayon she had used to draw colors for sad days. And Nora Harper, the invisible woman, the woman who had been counted at $78 and found to be worth far more, finally understood what it meant to be seen. The library in Giovanni Castelliano's mansion was a cathedral of leather and gold. Floor-to-ceiling shelves wrapped 3 walls, holding thousands of books that had never been read, collected for the appearance of intelligence rather than its pursuit. Afternoon light streamed through windows that overlooked the Los Angeles basin, the city sprawling below like a kingdom of glass and concrete. Emma sat on the Persian carpet, her small fingers arranging and rearranging a collection of porcelain dolls, each one dressed in miniature versions of clothing she would never need to wear. She hummed while she worked, a sound like wind chimes, her trauma healing slowly but visibly. Each day she smiled more, laughed easier, called Giovanni Daddy without hesitation. Nora Harper sat in a leather chair that cost more than the apartment where she had once counted $78 under a lamplight. She was no longer wearing the maid's uniform. The black and white fabric had been folded carefully and placed in storage 3 days ago. Instead, she wore a simple cream-colored dress, modest but expensive, chosen by Giovanni's sister and delivered to her room without explanation. On her lap rested an envelope. Inside was a check. $500,000. She had tried to refuse it 3 times. Giovanni had silenced her the 4th time by simply taking her hand. "You are going to listen to me," he had said, his voice like thunder rolling across distant mountains. "You saved my daughter twice. Once at the shelter when you protected her from a system designed to chew up children and discard them. Once at the restaurant when 3 armed men stood between her and destruction. This is not payment. This is gratitude. This is a father acknowledging that he froze and you did not." Now, sitting in the afternoon silence, Nora held the envelope like it might dissolve if she gripped it too hard. Emma looked up from her dolls and smiled. "Vivi, watch this," she said, arranging 4 dolls in a circle. "They are a family. The mommy and daddy and 2 babies. They live in a house with a garden and nobody takes the babies away." The words landed like a blade wrapped in ice. Nora's throat tightened. She set the envelope on the side table and moved to the carpet, kneeling beside Emma. The movement was careful, deliberate, because everything about being near this child felt fragile and precious and undeserved. "That sounds like a beautiful house," Nora said softly. "Do the babies have names?" "This one is Hope," Emma said, pointing. "And this one is Safe. And the mommy is brave because she does not get scared. And the daddy is strong because he protects everybody." Giovanni entered through the heavy wooden door without knocking. He moved with the controlled precision of a man accustomed to controlling rooms through presence alone. He wore a tailored charcoal suit with the jacket unbuttoned, the white shirt beneath open at the collar. A gold watch caught the light on his left wrist. But it was his face that held the room. The scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone like a map of violence survived, the dark eyes that had witnessed things that should have destroyed him, the expression that softened immediately upon seeing Emma. He lowered himself to the carpet with surprising grace for a man of his size and authority. At 6'1", with shoulders broad enough to block doorways, he folded himself into the space beside his daughter like a man learning to fit into a world that had never been designed to contain gentleness from people like him. "Tell me about your families," he said to Emma, his voice now gentle, a complete transformation from the one that had commanded men in black SUVs just days before. Emma pointed to each doll methodically, explaining their names, their house, their garden, the things they loved. Giovanni listened with the intensity of a man receiving classified intelligence. When Emma finished, he reached out and touched her hair, his large hand barely grazing the dark strands. The gesture was so tender it seemed impossible that these same hands had built an empire through violence and will. Nora watched from her position on the carpet. She did not know when the tears had started, only that they were there, sliding down her cheeks without sound. Giovanni noticed. Of course he noticed. He had built his empire on noticing things. He excused himself from Emma with a promise to help her build a castle for her dolls in an hour, and he stood, offering Nora his hand. She took it. His skin was warm, his grip secure, his thumb brushing against her knuckles for a second longer than necessary. They moved to the windows. Below them, the city burned in the afternoon heat, indifferent to the transformations happening inside this mansion. The distant sound of traffic rose like a tide. "You are thinking too much," Giovanni said. It was not a question. I do not understand why you care what happens to me, Nora replied. The words came from the deepest part of her, the part that had learned not to trust kindness because kindness had never been part of her experience. I was invisible for months in this house. You walked past me in hallways. You did not see me. And now you give me money and a room and a place at your table, and I do not understand the mathematics of it. Giovanni was quiet. The silence between them stretched like taffy, long and thin and fragile. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of things he did not usually say aloud. Because you saw me at my worst, he said. You saw me frozen. Paralyzed. Unable to protect the one person I swore I would always keep safe. And you acted anyway. While I stood like a stone statue, you moved like a blade. You fought 3 men. You could have died, and you fought anyway. He turned to face her fully. In the afternoon light, the scar on his face looked almost luminous, a permanent reminder of violence endured and survived. My father used to beat me, Giovanni continued. The words came slowly, each one a small act of surrender. Every night for years. He would come home drunk, and he would find me, and he would use his belt and his fists until I learned not to cry. Until I learned that crying only brought more pain. I swore, his voice cracked slightly, a sound Nora had never heard from him before. I swore that no child would ever suffer like I did. I swore I would become powerful enough to protect anyone I loved. Powerful enough that no one could ever touch them. And you did protect Emma, Nora said softly. She is safe because of you. She is safe because of you, Giovanni corrected. I built an empire. I survived things that should have killed me. But in that moment, I was powerless. And you were the only one who was strong. You taught my daughter that some people do not run. That some people stand. That love is not turning away when things become dangerous. It is stepping toward the danger because someone you care about is in it. He paused. The noise of the city below seemed very far away. Stay, he said. Not as an employee. As family. Emma needs you. And he stopped, the words difficult, as if he were learning a language he had never been taught. I need you. I need to watch you rebuild the life they tried to take from you. I need to watch my daughter grow up understanding that power without compassion is just cruelty with money. I need to know that the invisible woman who changed everything is not invisible anymore. Nora looked at Emma on the carpet, her small fingers still arranging dolls in her perfect family. She thought of the life she had lost, the husband whose photograph she still carried in the pocket closest to her heart. She thought of the $78 that had once been all she had left. She thought of this man who was feared by an entire city, who had men in black suits ready to move at his word, who knelt to his daughter's level just to hear about her drawings. I will stay, Nora said. The words were barely a whisper, but they changed everything. Something shifted between them in that moment, not spoken, not yet defined, but present in the space between their bodies. 2 people who had saved each other on nights when they nearly broke, beginning to heal in the light of an ordinary afternoon. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. Winter released its grip and spring arrived in Los Angeles like a benediction. The cherry trees in the mansion garden exploded into blossom, pink and white petals falling through the air like snow in a city that had never seen snow. Emma was 8 years old now. The nightmares had stopped 3 months ago. She slept through the night in a room decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars that Giovanni had carefully applied to the ceiling while she watched and offered encouragement. She ran through the garden now, her laughter carrying across the property like music, unbroken and joyful and completely free. Nora stood on the patio, watching. She was no longer the invisible maid. The woman who had moved through this house like furniture was now the woman who held this family together. She had enrolled in evening classes at a community college. She was building something. A future. A purpose. A life that extended beyond simple survival. Giovanni came to stand beside her. He did not announce his arrival, but she felt him there, felt his presence like warmth. His hand rested against her back, a gesture of connection, of something growing between them that neither had expected to feel. A year ago, she had been counting dollars to pay rent. A year ago, he had been a man too broken by his own darkness to believe in light. And now they stood together, watching the daughter they both loved discover what it meant to be safe. Emma spotted them and ran, her small body moving like light itself through the falling petals. "Daddy, Vivi, look," she called. In her open palm was a butterfly, wings moving slowly, the colors iridescent and impossible. She held it toward the sky. "I caught it so you could see how beautiful it is. Now I am letting it go because beautiful things need to be free." She opened her hand. The butterfly lifted, carried on air currents invisible to human eyes, and disappeared into the blue. Giovanni and Nora exchanged a glance. An understanding passed between two people who had found each other in darkness. Who had learned that strength is not the absence of fear but the choice to move despite it. Who had discovered that family is not determined by blood but by the decision to stand beside someone on their worst nights. Nora Harper had counted $78 and believed her life was ending. She could not have known that protecting one child would change everything. That fighting 3 armed men would reveal the strength she did not know she possessed. That the feared Mafia boss would see her, truly see her, and recognize someone as broken and brave as himself. Giovanni Castellano had built his empire to escape the powerless child he once was. But it was in his moment of greatest powerlessness that he found what he needed most. A woman who acted when he could not. Who loved his daughter without condition. Who reminded him that real strength is not measured in violence but in the capacity to remain gentle when the world has taught you only cruelty. They saved each other on the nights they nearly broke. And in that salvation, something unexpected grew. Something neither of them thought they deserved. Family. Purpose. Love. A second chance. Emma hugged both of them, her small arms stretching around their legs, binding the 3 of them together with the simplicity of a child's love. The 3 of them stood in the garden as cherry blossoms fell like benedictions, like miracles, like proof that even the darkest lives can be transformed. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes they come from a woman with $78 and the courage to fight. Sometimes they come from a man powerful enough to admit he was powerless. Sometimes they come wearing small hands and believing in families that live in houses with gardens where nobody ever leaves. If this story moved you, if Nora's strength and Giovanni's transformation touched something in your heart, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We bring you stories of courage and redemption and unexpected love every single day. Drop a comment below and tell us what you thought. What would you have done if you were Nora? How do you think Giovanni changed? Share this with someone who needs to remember that even in our darkest moments, we are stronger than we know. Tomorrow we bring you another story of survival and grace. We will see you there. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.